Well, first off, thank you for allowing me to tell my story. This is awesome to be able to do that, particularly during Women's History Month. You know, when I was growing up, I was somewhat of an activist, and I really wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself, and I wanted to give back, and I wanted to make sure that when I left this world, I left it a better place. And so I had two things happen on my journey. The first was related to my father. So we grew up very poor, and my parents were divorced, and my father, Air Force veteran in the Korean War, he became ill, and so he came to the Iowa City VA healthcare system here. And so my oldest brother and I, we would come down to the Iowa City VA. We lived about 100 miles away, and our neighbors would drop us off for the weekend, so we'd stay here. And, you know, I quickly learned a lot of things about life, but in particular, you know, just being afraid, you know, what was happening to my father. And one of my first memories from this experience was just standing at the A-Bank elevator, looking at the stairs, being young, all these smells, all these people, what was going on, and being very afraid, you know, heading up, walking up to the ICU to see my dad. And at that time, the visiting hours were such that it was like 10 minutes every hour you could see the veteran. And so we would go inside and just wonder, what were all those tubes? What was he doing? What was happening to him? But what was so incredible for me during this journey was that the veterans quickly, you know, learned to know who we were. And so they took care of us. They saw that here's these two kids in this waiting area by themselves, and no one was with them, and so we needed to care for them because that's was our brother, and we need to help our brother's children. So as I began my journey to find out what I wanted to do with myself in the coming years, I looked at, you know, during that time there weren't many professions for women. And so it was either you were a teacher or nurse or something, you know, it was pretty limited. So I chose nursing. I had the drive to care for people, and I wanted to help them. And seeing how, you know, I could help my father and just being there for him. And so that was really my passion in becoming a nurse. And so I survived all that. And actually I realized during those very acute moments when you're in those situations, you do whatever it takes to help, you know, certainly preserve the person and make sure they come out of the situation alive and well. And so that was really key. And so it was important for me to help understand that and to be able to be more targeted in what I needed to certainly pursue in my nursing career. So caring is certainly only one aspect, but the other was really about listening. And what I found as I progressed is that, you know, in talking and, you know, being a direct, you know, hands-on care provider is phenomenal. And when you have a conversation with a veteran at 3 in the morning, you can have some pretty raw conversations about some subjects that they've never told their family, they've never told their spouse, what they're afraid of, their fear of dying, you know, what they regret in their life. And I felt so honored to be a part of that, to be able to, you know, have them feel comfortable sharing their stories with me in some of their darkest moments of their lives when they say, am I going to die? And what do you say to them? And, you know, you just reassure them, I'm going to take care of you and I do everything I can for you. And that was really the connection to the veterans and public service, because when you think about, we talk about, you know, to care for those who have borne the battle, but when you think about veterans who really have gone into the military and they're willing to give the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom, and that is so powerful. And to think that they would do that, why not? Why would I not go into this profession and help them? Being the first female director at the Iowa City VA healthcare system, certainly there were some challenges associated with that in terms of also not being a veteran and being a nurse. And so how do you come into a healthcare system and build trust and credibility? And so that was key for me to understand how I needed to navigate the healthcare system. My first year was rough. You know, I would go into a stakeholder meeting and I would say, you know, my name's Judith Johnson-Mekota, I'm the director of the Iowa City VA healthcare system. And they would say, oh, you're the director's secretary? those type of situations. So it was important for me to see how I would sell myself to those individuals, because I could observe my male colleagues walk into a situation, veterans, majority of veterans, and they could quickly connect. And so I was like, how do I learn from that, and how do I build that trust and credibility? And so my strategy is that I listen. Listening is a fine art. It's really difficult to effectively listen, because oftentimes you're trying to prepare your response to the individual. And so I really tried to listen and make sure that I could provide feedback. If veterans brought a situation before me, I wanted to ensure that I got back with them. And so that was critical to build that credibility and the reliability. And I think that has worked for me fairly well so far. But certainly, being a woman, it's always important to think about how you lead an organization as well. When I recognized that there was some variability in situations gender related, it was important for me to make sure that I was representing the organization effectively. And I often thought, am I hurting the organization being a female leader? And so it was important for me to certainly learn how to communicate effectively and what worked and what didn't work in those situations. And so it's always, once again, lifelong learner, always learning those processes, always continually improving. So of course I would have to say my family, and of course my father. He was just so strong and really taught me how to, always be a lifelong learner, learn everything that you can, and do anything that you do with passion, and certainly all that you can give towards that effort. And so that's really been impactful in my life. And my mother she's so strong, and seeing a strong woman during that era of time was so helpful in me understanding what does it take and what are the barriers and challenges that you face as a woman. But I'm so fortunate to have so many mentors in my life, and really good individuals that I can ask any question, never a stupid question. I always felt comfortable talking with those individuals, but also having the opportunity to work with leaders that had some improvement opportunities. And I learned what I would and would not do in those situations, but also tried to understand why were they not as effective as they should have been, and why did they make those mistakes, or why did they lead in that direction. And so that helped to sort of shape my definition of leadership and what I would want it to be. I love the education mission of our VA, and that is critical. Certainly as a lifelong learner, that is important to always be learning. I tell my mentees and others that I work with, I had a personal development plan for many, many years, and I will have one until the day I die, because I think it's important to always have goals and always being able to seek and how to learn different areas and new opportunities. So that's really been critical as well. I think to be able to have that passion, that drive to be able to learn new things, it's just incredible. One of my other roles, not only as a healthcare system director, but I'm a director for the mental health integrated clinical community. And I've been in that role for about 7 years now. And I've been so fortunate to work with the mental health team across the VISN with the 8 healthcare systems. And one of the areas that I've really advocated for is related to suicide prevention. Suicide is preventable, and I truly believe that. And there's a lot of opportunities for us to continue to work towards that goal, particularly just in our care delivery systems, our support systems for veterans, and most importantly for our communities as well. And I also feel like with mental health, there is still a stigma associated with seeking mental health and counseling, and continually trying to work on that to make sure we can overcome some of those barriers, because certainly the resources in the communities are limited, and how can we as a VA help those veterans overcome those barriers and those challenges that they face seeking care. I think the most important legacy is to be true to yourself, really understand what you want and what you want to aspire to in your career, both in your personal and professional life. That's important, and that was a lesson for me as well. But it's important to be able to know yourself, because you will find yourself in situations where you may have the desire or just feel like, okay, I'm going to acquiesce on this situation because it's so overwhelming. And don't give up. Stick to your ethics and your values, and your integrity is so important. And people are always watching you. As a leader, you're always on stage. So it's important to make sure you're true to yourself. Me being in this role, it's not about my ego or being a leader. Certainly it was part of my development plan, but it really is about being there for all the staff here and for the veterans. That's really the key. That's what drives me every day, because if they're not successful, we will not be successful as a healthcare system. So it's important that I help them to be able to meet expectations, whether it be access expectations of veterans or quality of care. Those are continuing challenges that everyone faces, and I'm there for the staff. So that's really what I want them to know.